Good evening. We are here. It's privileged elections. I think this is our last meeting before crossover. We caught up quite a bit of a docket, so we're going to get right into things. We'll start off because I know other people have places to be with Delegate Wright. If you want to step right up, and you've got two House bills before us. 55.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to take HB 55 first, please. I'll start off by telling you reason this legislation is before you. Last year I had a primary opponent, and about 2 weeks before the primary date, my opponent dropped out. There was no process to stop the primary, although I was the only candidate, so my localities had to pay the cost of putting on a primary, and I was the only person left on the ballot, my opponent having dropped out. So I want to go over the bill with you. It's House Bill 55. If a person who is a candidate for nomination by a political party at a primary election and who has qualified to have their name printed on the ballot for such election submits on or after the 44th day before, but prior to the Tuesday immediately preceding the primary election, a signed and notarized notice of his intent to withdraw in accordance with the code section, and the result of such withdrawal is one remaining candidate who is now unopposed for nomination by the political party. Such remaining candidate shall be declared the nominee of such political party for the office sought, and the primary election shall be canceled. And this is the process that would stop the primary election. If you go to number B on House Bill 55, upon receipt of a candidate's signed and notarized notice of withdrawal, the General Registrar shall immediately transmit such notice to the local electoral board and the state board and certify that the remaining candidate is now unopposed for nomination by the political party for the office sought. Within 1 calendar day of receiving such notice and certification, the state board shall declare the remaining candidate to be the nominee of such political party for the office sought. As soon as possible thereafter, the local electoral board shall petition the circuit court for the cancellation of the primary. And number C, the state board shall prescribe the procedures for canceling a primary election pursuant to this section, including instructions for locking and securing voting systems, the disposition of marked and unmarked absentee ballots, and voter registration, voter notification. The provisions of this section shall not apply to primaries for the nomination of candidates for the office of President of the United States. And this provision, the first enactment shall become effective on January the 1st, 2025. And then on line 46, the Department of Elections shall convene a work group to advise and collaborate with the state board in developing the procedures of canceling a primary election in accordance with provisions of the subsection as created by this act. The work group shall be composed of representatives of the Voter Registrars Association of Virginia and Virginia Electoral Board Association, and shall begin its work no later than July 1, 2024. The work group shall complete its work, and the state board shall prescribe such procedures no later than December 1, 2024. And to better explain this, I do have the Registrar of Mecklenburg County here with me as well. I'll be glad to answer what questions that I can that you may have, and then I'll defer those to him, because he's had the experience of having to go through this last year.
Thank you, Delegate Wright. What I'm going to do is Delegate Price has a question first. I think you might be able to get this.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if it's much of a question or a comment, but when I first had a little pause reading the bill, but it is true that there are no write-ins allowed during a primary anyway, so this isn't necessarily taking away the will of the voter because there was no other option anyway. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And I believe part of the bill mentioned a study or report.
It was a work group.
A
In
work
other words,
group, okay.
That'll help facilitate the process.
Now, I would say, I think this is a pretty good bill, and we want it to keep going. So would it be a friendly amendment to remove the work group so that we can keep this bill going?
All right, would that mean the bill would pass, or what?
Well, let me help you.
Okay.
I will write a letter requesting the work group, but if you were to keep the work group in, I'm not sure that we would be able to pass it out of subcommittee.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with the advice of the committee. But would you like to hear from the registrar as well?
Absolutely. We can hear from the registrar.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Jason Corwin. I'm the registrar for Mecklenburg County and have been in the position for over 12 years. This is not the first time I have had this issue. It's happened in Northern Virginia, rural localities, and it affects us all. And the main purpose for this is this would alleviate a lot of extra time and money. Just my locality spent an additional $18,000 after the opponent dropped out. All 5 localities in Delegates' Rights District spent over $50,000 for just this primary. And had it been able to be canceled, we would have saved those extra funds that many localities had not allocated funds for. Now, just so y'all know, and I'm sure you do, after an opponent drops out, the state board issues this. It's a notice of withdrawal. We have to put it in every single absentee ballot that goes out by mail, every voting booth, to let them know that that candidate, in the state's own words, is no longer a candidate. And for them not to have any recourse to end the election is wrong, because now we have to go through a process where there's only one viable candidate. And in Virginia's code, if there's one viable candidate, there is to be no primary. So if y'all had any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them. If not, I'll turn it back over.
Well, thank you for your service in that. Delegate Price.
Yes, Madam Chair, I would make the motion. Let me think. I move that we would amend the bill to remove the reference to a work group in concept and then have that amendment in front of us for full committee.
Second.
All right, it has been moving. Yep. Council?
Council can ask a question. When we're saying remove, do we want to just strike the enactment clause completely, or did this want to be modified and somehow it seemed striking?
Strike it.
So we can adopt it like for reals, not just in concept.
For real is the technical term, the way we will adopt it. It has been moved and properly second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, it has been adopted. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to
Madam
speak?
Chair, I had a question.
Oh, Delegate
For the
Henson.
registrar. My question to you, the $18,000 and $50,000 that you referenced, did that also include reprinting of the ballots to remove?
There was no reprinting of the ballot. I think I have to answer the Madam Chair. Sorry. But there is no reprinting of the ballot. We just have to hang the notice up because there would not have been enough time within 11 days, and there's no provision in the code once you have printed a ballot to reprint them, removing a name.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Srinivasan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Registrar, can you explain the 44 days? I'm trying to visualize.
So we have 45 days of early voting. We have to have time to deliver the voting machines. So there's a time period where there has to be a cutoff to where even if they dropped out, we'd have to have the primary. I'm a small locality. We can deliver our machines in 2 days. I'm trying to keep in mind the fact that Fairfax, Virginia takes much, much longer to deliver their machines. And that's why there's that cutoff period the way it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Clara Wheeler. I'm on the electoral board in Albemarle County. Unfortunately, we have not had this problem, but I commend Delegate Wright, and you've got a great witness from Jason Corwin, because we all know what a trial it is when someone resigns, when a candidate withdraws. Great expense, as he just said, and these are small rural counties in which this occurred. It would have been hugely expensive if, suppose you were in the aforementioned Fairfax County. mean, this is, I think, auspicious. It's the first bill in this committee, and I think everybody likes it. I hope you will, because it certainly makes life easier for registrars and electoral board as well as voters. Thank you.
Delegate Bloxham.
Just a clarification, we are keeping the delayed enactment clause. Okay, thank you.
In support? Yes. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Robert Chadine. I'm the chairman of the Mecklenburg Electoral Board, and I fully support all that's been said ahead of time, and I applaud the committee for amending it to solve the technical problem of the work group. But I can support the amendment and the bill as written, and it will be a great cost saving to not only us, but those people that voted and had indirect cost associated with voting as well. So the number that was stated is a little bit understated as to the total cost to the voters and taxpayers of the region. So I applaud this, and I hope that you continue on the road to passing.
Thank you for your testimony. Any other questions from the committee?
Move to report as amended.
It has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 55 as amended. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the rolls, and it looks like House Bill 55 reports on a vote of 7-0. Now we have House Bill 56 before us.
First, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, and the committee for getting my bill straightened out. I appreciate it. The next one, I don't think will be quite as easy. But the next bill is House Bill 56. And this time I'd like to ask my chief co-patron, Bill Wiley, Delegate Wiley, rather, to come forward with me.
Well, before he does that, because I know that you aren't just best friends here, we want to put your bills together. Okay. If I'm correct? Right? Okay. So I would entertain a motion to incorporate House Bill 1439 into House Bill 56.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? All right.
Thank you. I'll just give you the summary. This House Bill 56 adds party affiliation beginning January 1, 2025 to the information that an applicant is asked to provide when registering to vote. The applicant may indicate that they are an independent. The bill specifies that voters registered prior to January the 1st, 2025 will be designated as independent unless they provide a political party affiliation to the General Registrar. Voters may change their political party affiliation or independent status by written notice at any time before the registration records are closed prior to an election. The bill also provides that voters who are on the permanent absentee voter list will receive primary ballots for the political party with which they are registered as affiliated. Finally, the bill requires the state party chairman of each political party to file written notice with the State Board of Elections by January 31st of each year, stating the rules adopted by the duly constituted authorities of the state political party for participation in the party's primaries to be held from April 1st of that year through March 31st of the following year. And there is a fiscal impact to this piece of legislation as well. It's item number 77. I thought I would tell you that in advance.
Thank you, Delegate Wright. Delegate Riley, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I just want to say that this came to my attention for the last Senate primary. We had, I think, 8 folks running for that position, and it seemed to have gotten watered down on either side, and we were looking for just folks to vote on one side of the fence for the primary side. So I felt from some constituents who asked me to carry this bill to see if we can get consideration from your end. So thank you for letting me be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the subcommittee?
Madam Chair.
Delegate Bloxham.
So if you want to change from independent to Republican or to Democrat, would you just alert the registrar's office? And what type of, could I do that one week and the next week go back and change back again, or change to Democrat the next week?
I suppose you could. Now, I don't know the answer to that question. That's something that would
maybe counsel, could you?
Madam Chair, Delegate Bloxham, the bill does not include any type of restriction on the number of times a voter may switch their registration or their party affiliation in their registration. However, it does have a period that if someone tries to change their registration, their affiliation in their registration in the days leading up to the election, they are unable to.
Did that answer your follow-up, Delegate Bloxham?
Does it say how many days before the election they could do that?
It's when the registration records are closed, Madam Chair, Delegate Bloxham, so 21 days prior.
Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Srinivasan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for the patron. This is about new registrations. What about the current millions of voters?
I couldn't hear him.
You're talking about voter registration by political party when asked to provide when registering to vote. So if I am going to register to vote, this bill will require me to choose D or R.
Correct. And to that point, if I may, Counsel.
Or independent.
I beg your pardon. Or independent, yes, sorry. And to that question, this happens, our understanding, it happens in other, when we're more of an R area, a Republican-based red area, but this happens also in more dominant Democrat areas where you have Republicans coming in to vote in Democratic primaries. So to be clear, or independents voting for that matter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Srinivasan.
Sorry, so you're talking purely about primary voters where I go in and I ask for a Republican ballot or Democratic ballot?
Primary.
Delegate Wassman.
If I could ask another question too, maybe for council, I'm unclear how this would relate to same-day registrations or registrations after that 21-day period of time.
Madam Chairman, Delegate Waxman, the bill does not provide a clear answer to that question. I would say that it would be a question that would be on someone's registration application if they did show up to a same-day register. As far as how that would work, though, if they are showing up to same-day register at a primary election, I think that would probably depend on whatever guidance or regs the department or state board adopts as to how that would be handled. And they're either sitting out of my eye line or they're not here.
Is there a follow-up, Delegate Watsman?
Does this bill allow them to develop those regulations?
Madam Chair, Delegate Waxman, yes, they would be able to put together any type of guidance documents that would be necessary.
Thank you.
Delegate Srinivasan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up question, Delegate. So right now when I walk into a primary election, whether it's Republican or Democrat, it's assumed that I'm asking for the Democratic ballot, if it's a Democratic primary that I'm walking into. And I cannot vote in the Republican primary. I can vote only in one primary. No? Is that not accurate?
Madam Chair, I think to the answer to the delegate's question is currently you're allowed to go into a primary and vote regardless of your party affiliation. And that's what we're trying to
Because
clarify.
we don't have party affiliation in Virginia.
Delegate Srinivasan.
Sorry, Madam Chair, can
Delegate Srinivasan.
yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We don't have party affiliation in Virginia. So I walk into a Democratic primary or I walk into a Republican primary, I'm given that ballot.
That's true. You can do that.
I can walk in. So I'm trying to understand, Delegate, what does this aim to do?
So I think to my point and maybe as well to my fellow delegate here is that the primaries are specific for the party. The time for the non-specific party where you can reach across to vote for somebody else is during the general. So we're trying to clarify party affiliation during the primary, which is what the primary is all about. It's party-driven at the beginning, and that's our stance here is to try to see if we can get positioning based on party affiliation so that we have a clear identification who's voting and which party for which individual.
Madam Chair, can I ask a follow-up question?
Delegate Srinivasan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But Delegate, I'm just trying to clarify, but we don't have party affiliation in Virginia. So if we collect this data, how would this be? Because we don't have party registration.
May I defer to counsel, Madam Chair?
Council, please.
Madam Chair, Delegate Srinivasan, the bill adds the party affiliation at the registration level to then set up the ability for the political parties to be able to decide who may participate in their primary. Right now, Virginia does not have party registration, so we have open primaries. This would move to partially closed, which gives a variety of options to the political parties, whether to leave their party participation to people who are registered as affiliated or registered as independents and affiliated, or open to everybody. So it's really the two pieces, that the registration and then that allowing for the different standards for who may participate by the political party.
Gratitude Council. Delegates Price. Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is relating to voters who may be in strong red or blue districts who may not have a Republican Democratic primary. So for an example, House District 19, strong Dem district, I think it's a plus 32 Dem district. There's normally not a Republican primary, but there are Republican voters there. How does this affect those voters who may not want to put that indication because they're like, hey, I'd rather participate in a Dem primary because I know that a Republican primary will not happen in this area?
Well, presently, as was previously stated by the delegate, anybody can vote in the primary now. It's an open primary. So if the primary was closed so only Democrats could vote in a Democratic primary and only Republicans could vote in a Republican primary, the case that you brought up, the Republicans in that district could not vote in the Democratic primary. And if they didn't have a candidate, they wouldn't be able to vote at all. The way it is now, for instance, and if a person, say if the Democrat Party perceived that the Republican had say two people running, and one was a weak candidate, they may go in and vote for the Democrat, the Republican that they thought was the weakest, hoping he'd win. The same thing on the Republican side. That's what could happen. So this way, you could only have Democrats voting in their primary and Republicans voting in theirs. That's one of the biggest advantages to it, is one party couldn't attempt to influence another party's selection of the nominee, regardless whether it was Democrat or Republican.
Thank you, Delegate Wright and Delegate Wiley. I'm going to try to keep the comments. We've had a pretty robust conversation about this bill. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? If you could come and give brief comments. Anyone in opposition?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Mary Crutchfield with League of Women Voters of Virginia. One of the best parts of voting in Virginia is that voters do not register by political party, which allows us all to vote in either primary. Open primaries invite independents, who are now a majority of all voters, to participate. Yes, spoiler voters might affect an outcome, but that is not common and affects both parties. Also, the bill suggests that the political parties can write rules controlling who votes in state-run primary, which is a disturbing prospect in a democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see online we have a Dr. Stephen Richardson wishing to speak in opposition to the bill.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm an independent voter and a member of the Forward Party from Falls Church. I oppose House Bill 56 because it represents a giant step backward for voters, and I have three primary objections to this legislation. First of all, closing the primaries is unjust. It grants private organizations the power to exclude voters or force us to join them to participate in an election that, as Delegate Henson just mentioned, often determines the ultimate outcome. Secondly, it's undemocratic because it will allow a select number of voters to choose candidates who will represent all of us. And finally, it aggravates partisanship, which has already done great harm to our trust in government and will likely hasten the exodus from participation in party politics, especially among younger voters. Please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson, and I would like to acknowledge we had a couple comments in opposition online. Farland of Vienna, Pollard of Lexington, Cantrell of Veterans for All Voters in Arlington, Richardson of Henrico, Earl from Veterans for All Voters in Ketswick, Hughes from the Forward Party and represent us in Scotts County, as well as Porter in Chesapeake, Richardson in Charles Falls Church, and Mallory of the Virginia NAACP in Glen Allen, Virginia, all writing online in opposition to the bill. Are there any more questions from the committee? Seeing none, the committee operates by motion.
Motion to report.
Okay. All right, that has not been seconded, which means very well the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you all so much for your presentation. We appreciate you.
I appreciate y'all's time. Thank you.
Let me just make sure as I know that you all are bearing with us as we are in all the spaces and places, is there anyone here who has somewhere else to be? All right, so I know I am going to take up Delegate O'Quinn. He's already kind of let us know he has another bill to present. But if you do have another bill to present, could you just, okay, I got the two of you. Copy all. You have somewhere to be? No, you're good. Okay, so Delegate Helmer.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I think, someone's got the bill number right, HB 375?
HB 375.
Madam Chair, HB 375 is a bill many of us have seen before. It is a democracy bill. It is very straightforward. It simply says that the winner of the national popular vote, after enough states have signed onto this compact to represent a majority of the electoral votes, would receive the electoral votes of us and all the other states who are part of the compact, correcting a flaw in our system that has allowed at times those who do not win the majority vote to become the President of the United States. It is a pro-democracy bill that I hope this committee will support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, gratitude. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Mary Crutchfield, League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League of Women Voters of Virginia supports the National Popular Vote Compact. This compact would establish an agreement among states to guarantee that the presidency would be awarded to the presidential candidate who receives the most popular votes across 50 states and the District of Columbia. The president and vice president should always have been directly elected by the people. The Electoral College is undemocratic and riddled with issues. The candidate who placed second in the popular vote was elected in 2016, 2000, 1888, 1876, and 1824. Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution provides that the states have plenary authority to designate their electoral college votes as they see fit, providing, of course, that in doing so, they do not violate other constitutional commands, such as those guaranteed by the Equal Protection Clause. The states, therefore, can pledge to commit all their electoral college votes to the winner of the popular vote. Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Steve Rossi. I represent the Family Foundation of Virginia. We oppose the MPV because not only does it dilute Virginians' votes, it could actually nullify them by subjecting them to the votes of several other states. Further, this would entice candidates to ignore all but the big population centers in the largest states. In addition, so drastically altering the electoral system in this way surely would be struck down by the federal courts as a change to the U.S. Constitution without a proper constitutional amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And lastly, the Electoral College system actually works not only nationally but locally. A lot of cities, including right here in the city of Richmond, have adopted an Electoral College system to elect their mayors, where in Richmond, the candidate has to win 5 of the 9 council districts to be elected mayor. So if there's a big move to do away with the Electoral College nationally, actually localities are starting to model their elections after this. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And so we have about 3 comments online. I see first up we have Anne Gregorian speaking in opposition to the bill.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. First of all, I would like to say that we are not ruled by mob rule.
I apologize for interrupting you. We have a new policy here, and also from Ms. Z as well. Ms. Lindy, I really do apologize. We'll start the time over. If you're going to testify online, you'll have to have your cameras on. You may be good actors, but we've had some bad ones.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that we are a representative, a republic, not a democracy, which would mean that we actually ruled by mob. But I do feel that a national popular vote would further erode my voice as a citizen and a Virginian. And I would like to lastly say that there is nothing in the popular vote that requires states to actually follow through with that compact. So this legislation does nothing to address a situation where we actually enter into a national popular vote compact and a state withdraws and decides not to cast their electors as promised. So I oppose this. I think it's bad for Virginia. I think it's bad for the United States. And I hope you will vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lindsay Z.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Zaya. I'm with Virginia Institute Action, and we oppose HB 375. We believe in preserving our current use of the Electoral College as it ensures voices of Virginians across the Commonwealth matter. And it doesn't favor more populated areas more like the National Popular Vote Compact would. By joining the compact, Virginia would also be giving up some of our influence as a state. Since some candidates currently get the attention of since candidates who seek to win Virginia campaign here, and if we join the compact, then our electoral votes wouldn't matter as much. And so for these reasons, we oppose HB 375 and ask you to please consider opposing the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zaya, and I'll acknowledge that we had 16 comments online in opposition to the bill. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, the committee operates by, Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a motion when appropriate.
Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the patron for bringing this bill forward. But at this time, I move to carry this over to 2025.
It has been motioned to carry.
Second.
Ooh, got me. It has been moved and properly second to carry over House Bill 375 to 2025. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you so much, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Look forward to working on this over the next year. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll take up House Bill 90. Delegate McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 90, you would think is not a necessary bill because we currently have in code that if a person runs as a political, for whatever political party, and is defeated in a primary, that person can't run for office. It's our sort of loser law that's been in code for quite some time. What this bill hopes to correct, and I'll describe is a situation that we had whereby somebody is not defeated in the primary, so they withdraw from the primary the day before. Meanwhile, and there was some confusion because that person didn't seem to be spending much money, wasn't campaigning, but the other person was. And so now they run as an independent in the fall, 5 months later, and they have all their resources. And now they are running against somebody who had expended a bunch of resources 5 months earlier for the primary. So we go to the Board of Elections and say, hey, this is a sore loser law. This person's not allowed to do this. And the election says, well, I understand, but they weren't defeated because they withdrew. And so that's what this bill hopes to prevent.
Thank you, Delegate McNamara. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? All right. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? In opposition? Okay, and it looks like we don't have anyone online. We have two online comments from Cantrell, actually both from Veterans for Virginia, Cantrell of Arlington and Cantrell of Arlington. He had lots to say in opposition to the bill. Delegate Henson.
I have a motion when appropriate.
Okay. Are there any further questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Henson.
Move to report.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 90. The clerk will open the rolls. All right, the clerk will close the rolls. And it looks like House Bill 90 reports on a vote of 6-1. Thank you, Delegate McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Next, let's take up House Bill 409. Delegate Askew.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Madam Chair, I have before us today HB 409, which permits a locality who was under a court order for a violation of the Federal Voting Rights Act or the Virginia Voting Rights Act to adopt an ordinance converting one or more at-large members of a public body to a single-member district to comply with such order. If a locality chose to adopt such ordinance, it would be required to allow any member whose seat is converted to complete their existing term. This legislation would allow a locality to make this change even if the court order is later vacated, giving the locality the ability to avoid additional litigation. This would not require the adoption of such an ordinance. It only provides the locality the option to adopt an ordinance when they believe it is the locality's best interest. The City of Virginia Beach has appealed a few decisions, but in the same year, the General Assembly passed legislation that prohibits the use of at-large district systems like the one Virginia Beach was previously using. Because of this change in the Virginia law, the U.S. Court of Appeals vacated the General District Court ruling, but remanded the case back to the General District Court for further review. So essentially what this bill is doing is codifying in the general law our current 10-1 voting system. So it'd be the pleasure to committee to adopt this.
Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, thank you for your time today. My name is Chris Boynton. I'm a Deputy City Attorney for the City of Virginia Beach. I'm here to register the city's strong support for this bill. It would have the effect that Delegate Askew tells you it would. It's also a very narrow bill that would not create unintended consequences outside of the particular circumstance that it is attempting to cure. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the panel may have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay, seeing none, the committee.
Move to report.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and properly second to report House Bill, lost my train of thought here, House Bill 409. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the rolls, and it looks like House Bill 409 reports on a vote of 4-3.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next, we will take up House Bill 694. You have the floor, Delegate O'Quinn.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. So House Bill 694 is a bill that seeks to do a couple of things primarily. And I do have some line amendments that Council has, and I'm happy to explain those after they're reported if you'd like.
Madam Chair, these line amendments are available online, but if there is a need for me to read them, I'm happy to do so.
Okay. Would it like to? Yes, please.
On line 89, after mandatory, we'll insert at least once during the period. On line 128, after registrar, we'll strike the remainder of line 128 through location on line 129 and insert by 5 p.m. on the day of the election. And then on line 30, after the end of the sentence, it ends with polls period, we'll insert absentee ballots that are returned in person or by mail to the office of the general registrar after 5 p.m. on the day of the election, and absentee ballots that are returned to a drop-off location on the day of the election shall be processed after the deadline for the return of absentee ballots by mail provided by Section 24.2-709.
Thank you. The committee, is there a motion to? Okay, it has been moved and properly second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay, the amendment has been adopted. Delegate O'Quinn.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So the first thing that this bill would do is allow officers of election at the central absentee precinct, which is generally at the registrar's office, to begin counting and recording the number of votes that are cast by absentee ballot after noon on election day. So under current law, those absentee ballots are counted, essentially tallied, as in your locality had 500, but they're not counted, as in put into the tallying, into the actual machine until later in the day. So now what we're trying to do is essentially speed up that count, particularly if you're in a large locality. And you don't have to wait until 7 p.m. to begin counting these ballots. And I will say that it's already in state law. We're talking through this with some registrars, and it's already in state law that no vote total shall be determined until the day of the election. So you can't go online and see, oh, geez, I'm running 173 absentee ballots behind my behind my opponent. So it does speed up the count for those ballots that are sent in, and hopefully make the registrar's life a little bit easier, because the other main thing that it would do is allow the registrars to begin scanning those absentee ballots 14 days prior to the election, whereas currently the law right now is 7. So depending on where you live on this particular aspect of it, in the county that I represent, which is heavily Republican, you get to the end and the numbers are whatever they are, and then the next day there's a big pile of additional pile of Republican votes that come crashing into the system. Whereas if you're in a very blue locality, it's the exact opposite thing, where you have a big pile that comes in, and in a statewide election, for governor or whatever, it ends up creating this weird thing, whereas these big dumps of votes come in, it's like Republicans spike up and then Democrats spike up, and it creates an odd situation where people are like, where on earth are all these votes coming from? So essentially, by going 14 days ahead of time and having these things scanned in and those numbers be able to report on election night, you're going to get a much more accurate view of what the election actually held for that particular day, and not see big spikes that come in several hours or days after the election. And I've been working with several registrars, but my local registrar as well. I'm not sure if he's online, but I know that they were going to have someone online. So I don't purport to be an expert on exactly how these things are handled in the registrar's office specifically.
Thank you, Delegate O'Quinn. Delegate Price.
Yes, I have a question either for the patron or council on the last amendment, and just trying to see what the effective outcome would be on that. So if there were absentee ballots, because they have until 7 p.m. So if at 5:05 there's an absentee ballot that was returned in person, then when would that one be counted?
Madam Chair, I'll I'll take a shot at it, and Megan, tell me if I'm wrong. So if they came in after 5 p.m. on Election Day, then they would go ahead and be counted the next day with other ballots that had come in the postal mail that may have beat the postmark requirement but weren't in hand that day. So it's anything up to 5 o'clock would go ahead and be counted. Anything after 5 o'clock would go in that next batch of, a much smaller batch of votes that would be counted that next day. Maybe. I see.
Council?
Madam Chair, Delegate O'Quinn. So the amendment would provide that those ballots that are received or come in after 5 p.m. Will actually not be processed until the 3 days following the date of the election, because that's how long we've given people to get their absentee ballots to the registrar. So
that would be on, Madam Chair, that would be on the Friday.
Yes, sir.
But 5 o'clock, the 5 o'clock cut that Delegate Price referenced would then push any of those ballots that weren't counted before 5 o'clock into that next batch, which would be counted on Friday. But I think the net effect would be that batch would be much smaller. Regardless of what came in the mail, it would be much smaller.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Bloxham?
So we adjusted something last year to prevent a ballot dump in the middle of the night. And I'm trying to think what that bill was. And does this take the bill, does it take it that much further? Because I think some localities actually start right away when they get them.
Madam Chair, Delegate Bloxham, I don't remember a particular bill from last year about ballot dumps. So
We have the election dictionary here too as well with bills. Delegate Price?
Yeah, so we have done quite a few things, but I think what the delegate is thinking through is the absentee ballots being counted with the precinct as opposed to the absentee ballots having their own precinct. And so instead of, I guess, shifting the numbers by that way, you would see a dump sometimes, but it would be because they weren't starting to be processed until after the election had closed that day. But that's the only bill that I remember that touched on this one. This seems to be a little bit different in how it's being handled by the staff as opposed to how it's being reported.
Delegate Bloxham, do you have a follow-up?
No, ma'am, I'm still trying to digest the change that we're doing right now.
Delegate Price?
So I do have a question, and I think, just understanding that we trust and adore the staff that go through this. But when we're talking about not just curing a ballot so that someone can fix the outer envelope, but we're actually talking about seeing who someone voted for ahead of the close of election. And understanding that this would probably never happen. But if someone were to let that information out, then the punishment seems to be after the damage had been done. Is there anything that can be added in order to protect that information from coming out, or being leaked out in that way?
Madam Chair, I would say that Delegate Price is right, that it does address that in the law. I feel like, and counsel can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not looking at that code section, that's one of those things where a complaint would have to be made, then it would have to be followed up on, et cetera. If there is a way to ratchet that down to where that eventuality is, I don't want to ever say impossible, because I guess nothing's impossible, but very close to impossible, then I'd be open to try to figure out exactly how to do that. But certainly, no one would want that information released ahead of time in any form or fashion.
We're all looking at you. All right, so while we process that, we're going to go ahead and take some comments. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? If you could come on up and just keep your comments brief. Come on.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, David Bailey here on behalf of the Voter Registrar Associations of Virginia, and we do support the bill. I understand the issue that was just being raised, and certainly no one would want any information to be released early. We think that this bill will help the voters know the results even sooner and more accurate, and it would be of help to the registrars too. So thank you for supporting the bill.
Thank you so much. Come on.
Mary Crutchfield, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We support HB 694 because the bill would ensure more timely election results. When the central absentee precincts in each locality can't begin to run the results tapes until the close of the polls, it can take many hours to get the results. I know at my precinct, it's an average of 3 hours after the poll closes by the time that we get our work finished. Timely results will encourage confidence in our elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Come on up.
Sarah Wheeler, Albemarle County Electoral Board, former Central Absentee Precinct Captain. I come with a question. Several years ago, in fact, I think it was when you learned folks still met on the first floor of what used to be this building before it was torn down, we discussed timely reporting of ballots and allowing large areas, and at the time it was Fairfax and other huge behemoths, to start processing or putting ballots in their machines and printing tapes. And that passed. Many localities, and you passed a law several years ago, to say that in the early pre-processing, not the cure process, as Delegate Price has pointed out, but the counting of absentee ballots, and I think we get tangled up in the word counting. Does that mean looking at the material information, which is what happens in CAP or the pre-processing of absentee ballots, opening them and putting them in the machines, and the optical scans tabulate, but you can't push the closed polls print tape until late, because then the results are known by everybody? Because Virginia now has to report by precincts, in the central absentee precinct, the tapes that come out of those machines will stretch in large localities way past the end of this room. I mean, way long, miles long in some of them. Does this bill allow the printing of the tapes from the the in-person absentee voting, which are on separate machines from the mailed back absentee ballots? Because again, those in-person machines will tabulate and produce the tapes for every precinct in the locality. And if you're in Fairfax, it's, I think, 264, 65. You folks from Fairfax would know better. So that's my question. Because we already put ballots in the machines before Election Day.
Okay. We're going to hold that question, okay? And we'll see if we can get you an answer. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Well, online we have Miss Allison Robbins wishing to speak in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Alice. I'm the General Registrar for the County of Wise. I am the Legislative Committee Co-Chair for the Voter Registrars Association. We'd like to thank Delegate O'Quinn for working with my Legislative Committee Co-Chair, Derek, in Washington County, which is his registrar. We strongly support this bill. This bill simply makes a technical adjustment to what is already in law now and what is already required. Current law requires that anyone present in the central absentee precinct, which when the counting of ballots occurs, must sign an oath swearing that they will not release any results that may be uncovered during the time period. Current law already allows for a noon start for the hand counting of ballots, which we know the hand counting of ballots produces actual results. And so what this bill will do was it will allow the central absentee to more timely provide the final results to the general registrar and to the public as a whole. And then it also gives some more flexibility in the pre-processing timeline. Currently, that starts at 7 days. Moving it back to 14 days gives more time for general registrars and staff and election officials to pre-process the by-mail absentee ballots. So we strongly support this bill, and we urge the committee to report the bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lindsay Zaya.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, committee. My name is Lindsay Zaya. I'm with Virginia Institute Action, and we're in opposition to HB 694. We just wanted to vocalize our opposition to policy changes that expand the time frame for counting absentee ballots. And while we are sympathetic to the hurdle of counting a large number of absentee ballots, we're concerned, as has been discussed, about potential unnecessary vulnerabilities that may occur by starting that counting process earlier. And we ask you to please vote no on HB 694. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just for that question, I don't know if anyone had an answer to the answer. Okay, I'll copy. Thank you very much. I didn't know that. The committee operates by motion. I don't believe that
Madam Chair.
Delegate Henson.
I have a comment and a motion. First, I just want to thank the patron for bringing this forward. I know for many years I've served as someone on voter protection as well as election officer, and I represent two of the largest counties, Fairfax and Prince William, but I do have some concerns that I think hopefully could be worked out in 2025 if you so choose to bring this forward, but the motion will be to move this to 2025.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and properly second to carry over House Bill 694 to 2025. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. All right, the motion passes by voice vote. Thank you so much, Delegate O'Quinn.
Thank you.
So what I'll do here, just so that we get a lay of the room, I have Converse Fowler next up, Runyon on deck, Garrett in the hole. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. HB 417 is a pretty simple bill that has to do with vacancies in special elections. When a vacancy occurs and there is a requirement to have a special election, there actually is no deadline for that. It can be longer than a year. In a year, I was asked why that choice was made, and I know a year seems like a really long time, but actually we've had 2 city council seats in Virginia Beach that were held for over 15 months by appointment. So this is a transparency bill, put the vote back into the hands of the voters, make sure the voters are actually choosing who represents them, and that appointments don't go on for too long, and a year is just a good starting point to give reference.
Thank you, Delegate Converse Fowler. Is there any questions from the committee, from the subcommittee? Okay. So is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? In opposition? Okay, seeing none. The committee operates by motion. It has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 417. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the rolls, and it looks like House Bill 417 reports on a vote of 4-3.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have Delegate Runyon up, Garrett in the hole, and Tran on deck. Did Delegate Runyon?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This bill is fairly straightforward, and it came about to request of Augusta County We had a turnover in election officials, and they identified that the current state code allows the electoral folks to come and request, or actually instruct the county that they're going to staff a certain number of people in that, and the county must fund that. So the county came to us. We worked out a deal, and I actually thought I had a deal worked out all the way across, but we'll see. This would put the staffing at the same posture we have for other constitutional officers. And so what it does, it ensures that we have staffing to provide for electoral offices throughout the Commonwealth at this baseline, so there's no question that we could have a locality understaffed, or you could have a situation that would be severely overstaffed. So that's what this bill does in a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Runyon. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Thank you, Chairman Glass and members of the subcommittee. Eldon James on behalf of Augusta County. I want to thank Delegate Runyon. He presented the bill exactly what it's all about. In the course of doing the budget this past year, the county funded an additional deputy registrar, and in the course of going through that process, they discovered that there really is no metric for registrars, unlike other shared positions, 1 to 1,500 for deputy sheriffs and each of your other shared offices. Because of that, the bill was introduced to direct the state board to develop guidance for localities based on some metrics, also empowering governing bodies to go beyond that metric if they felt they needed to. And finally, as part of that development of the guidance, to pull together a group representing with representatives from the Electoral Board Association, the registrars, VACO, and VML. And that's it. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the subcommittee? All right. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Mary Crutchfield, League of Women Voters, Virginia. We urge you not to report HB 465. The Senate Rules Committee failed to report the companion bill, SB 147. Local registrars and electoral boards know their staffing needs, their populations, and other variable considerations specific to their localities. They are best situated to determine the appropriate number of deputy registrars. The League does, however, favor the establishment of a work group of key stakeholders to develop staffing standards for elections offices.
Okay, so I believe we have one person online, Miss Allison Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Allison Robbins. I am the legislative co-chair for the Voter Registrars Association, and we strongly oppose this bill. Deputy registrars are an integral part of our electoral process, and the services that they provide to our citizens are critical and necessary. This bill eliminates the ability of electoral boards and general registrars, as is provided for in 24.2112 now, to properly staff the registrar's office in compliance with the entirety of Title 24.2, and we have strong objections to placing the ability to staff our office wholly in the hands of the local governing body. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the subcommittee? Hearing none, the committee operates by motion.
Motion to report.
Okay, it has been moved to report. Okay, there has not been a second. Delegate Runyon, your bill fails to report. Thank you. So next up, and thank you for coming in, then we have Delegate Garrett up, Delegate Tran on deck, and Delegate Scott in the hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
I would start rhetorically with the quip, and that is, how many Virginians does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is 5. It's 4 to change the light bulb, or 1 to change the light bulb, and 4 to sit around and talk about how amazing the old light bulb was. They probably put a statue of it up somewhere. Madam Chair, we do things sometimes because we've always done them that way, but what this bill would do is allow historically unrepresented or underrepresented folks a voice, a franchise, if you will. It would encourage presidential campaigns to travel to more widely across the Commonwealth. Why would it do that? Well, right now we allocate electoral votes like 47 other states based on a winner-take-all premise that essentially creates a circumstance where in 8 out of 12 elections, any Democrat voters in Virginia were disenfranchised. There were 0 electoral votes. And then in 4 out of 12, every Republican voter in Virginia was disenfranchised. So what this would do was take the popular vote of the Commonwealth of Virginia and award 2 electoral votes, 1 for each of the senators of the Commonwealth, based on that popular vote. And then from thence, the 11 congressional districts would each determine an electoral vote. Now, lest you think, oh my gosh, why would we do that? This is what Maine and Nebraska have always done. And somebody said to me about this bill, well, yeah, but are we even allowed to do that? And I love this, Madam Chair. It gives me the opportunity to be the dork, the nerd that I am. I've embraced it. Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution actually specifically tells the legislative bodies of the various states that they get to determine the allocation of the electoral votes of those states. And so if members of the committee don't think this is a good idea, that's fine. I get it. I'm not married to this bill. If it dies, I'll walk out smiling because God's great. But it is our job, right? So if we think this is a better way to do it, and I do, and that's why I'm carrying this bill, then it's certainly within our purview specifically under Article 2, Section 1, and then Clause 2, to do this. I just think that right now we know that incumbent presidents will visit the 8th because they can hop across the river into Alexandria and say, I'm in Virginia today. And they'll probably visit the 11th or the 10th, these Northern Virginia districts, because they're close to D.C. But as Virginia becomes more easily predictable, it becomes less likely that candidates visit other parts of Virginia. And where you have a district that's readily predictable, for example, the district represented by Congressman Scott, who I'm delighted to call a friend, for 8 straight elections, they got 0 electoral votes because of who won the state. So what this would do, again, is it would create a circumstance where if the folks in the 9th are at odds with the entire rest of Virginia, 12 electoral votes would go with the entire rest of Virginia, but the 9th could send theirs the other direction. And if we believe in, and I think we do, extending the franchise, making everybody's vote count, I think this is a good way to do it. So with that, I would rest.
All right. So are there any questions or comments from the subcommittee? Right. Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? In opposition?
Mary Crutchfield, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We urge you to reject this bill. It is bad enough that the President and Vice President of the United States are not elected by popular vote. It is wholly undemocratic for one political party to put a heavy thumb on the scale, as this bill would do by giving the candidates for those offices 2 extra votes from the party of the governor.
Madam Chair, may I speak to that? That's not the case, right? It's cool that they oppose it. That's fine. I don't want to be argumentative. Literally, whoever won the popular vote of the state, that election cycle would get those 2 votes. The way that the Electoral College works is we have 13 electoral votes in Virginia, 11 congressional districts, 2 senators by the Constitution. So whoever won the popular vote of the whole state would get those 2. And I have no problem with you opposing it, but I think it was mischaracterized. It has nothing to do with who's in the governor's mansion at all.
Delegate Garrett, I would urge you, there's no need to respond to public comment.
I don't think I communicated well.
However, I
But
will
about
give
committee
Delegate Price.
Do you have a substitute?
I do not think that
And Madam Chair, the reason why I ask is because on line 20, it literally says who represent the political party of the governor serving at the time.
Then I should, and that's my mistake. Yep. And so if that pushes the motion that the committee makes, then that's fine. That's my mistake. I appreciate you pointing it out. And I thank you, and I apologize. Should read my own bill more closely.
That is true. All right, is there a motion to amend? No.
That's not how I read the bill, but I get it. If you're reading it, I'm not going to argue. You got it in front of you.
All right. There's no virtual testimony, so the committee operates by motion.
like to make a motion to continue this to next year.
Substitute motion.
Delegate Price.
I'd like to lay this bill on, I move to lay this bill on the table.
Okay, it has been moved and properly second to lay House Bill 490 on the table. The clerk will open the rolls. Here she comes. All right, House Bill 490 has been laid on the table by a vote of 6-1. Thank you, Delegate Garrett, and your enthusiasm. We appreciate you. Next up, we have Delegate Tran, Delegate Scott on deck, and Delegate Reeser in the hole.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I do love the baseball references. Before you is House Bill 989. And I do have a line amendment.
Council will report.
Madam Chair, the line amendment is posted online, and it will strike on line 21 after the word review. Will strike any information about himself and insert his current voter registration information in voting history.
Okay. It has been moved and properly second to move the amendment. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay, the amendment is before us. Delegate Tran.
Much, Madam Chair. In the amendment we made at the request of the Department of Elections to clarify the information that would be available for the voter to review about themselves. And so we wanted to make sure that we were narrowing that scope. And so speaking to the bill. So this bill delineates the information that the Department of Election must provide on its website, and it requires the department to translate that information into languages that are covered by the Virginia Voting Rights Act and to check that translated information before primary and general elections. The information that must be provided includes the role of various agencies in Virginia elections, how and where to register to vote, how and where to vote, and any laws, regulations, policies, or forms related to elections. Currently, there are only 2 languages covered under the Virginia Voting Rights Act throughout the state. That's Spanish and Vietnamese, and the Department of Elections voluntarily translates some of the materials into Spanish, Vietnamese, and Korean. Several years ago, we discovered that the Department of Elections either incorrectly translated some of the Spanish language pages, and the problems ranged from simple typos to important election information that was had been partially translated, where you had the Spanish translation interspersed with English information that was still in English, and also some of the information was incredibly outdated. A couple of years ago, what we did when we passed the Virginia Voting Rights Act was to codify sections of the Federal Voting Rights Act, but at the local level in terms of language access for voting materials. We just want to make sure that we are codifying the requirements at the state level. I really appreciate the work that the state has done to this point, but we want to make sure that it's carried through in future administrations as well. We know that having information that's available, properly translated, and that is timely will help to enfranchise our voters who do not speak English as their primary language so that they can be able to make important voting decisions.
Thank you, Delegate Tran. Delegate Bloxham.
Your question, Madam Chair. So would the department with this website pull the information or, I guess, merge with their Vera system? Is that where they're getting this information that's going to be moving along?
Madam Chair, I would respond to the delegate by saying that, yes, currently as a voter, I'm able to access my own voter registration information and past voting history. So this would just make sure that that information is translated into another language.
Is there a follow-up, Delegate Bloxham? Okay. Any other questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, David Bailey on behalf of the Voter Registrars Association of Virginia. We appreciate Delegate Tran bringing this bill back again and encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Tran Nguyen with New Virginia Majority. We thank Delegate Tran for carrying this. We think it's really important that all voters receive accurate information in language. When they can go to an official website and know that that information around the voting requirements, ID requirements, everything is legitimate and accurate, it really facilitates their voting versus relying on third-party groups to translate, and it may or may not be the right information. So this really would facilitate making sure that our election administration and voters can have access in a fair way. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay, seeing none. We have Ms. Allison Robbins from the Voter Registrars of Virginia online.
Thank you, Delegate Glass, Chairman Glass, and members of the committee. The Voter Registrar Association strongly supports this bill. Particularly, we like that it creates a single location with the Department of Elections website for our voters throughout the Commonwealth who may need alternative language support in understanding the electoral system. This would ensure that registrars have this resource to provide to our citizens in the event that they need it. So we strongly urge the committee to support this bill. Thank you so much.
And thank you. Delegate Bloxham.
Just a question, I guess, for the department. I know they're getting ready to do a major upgrade. Uveris, is this something that you can do this year, or does this need to have an enactment clause to give you another year for the new system to come online?
Madam Chair, Rachel Lawless, Confidential Policy Advisor at the Virginia Department of Elections. We already do this with our Citizen Portal. We translated Citizen Portal into Vietnamese, Korean, and Spanish, so there are no adjustments to Veris that are needed for this or Citizen Portal.
Delegate Price.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a comment and a motion at the appropriate time.
Delegate Price.
Yes, I want to thank the patron for her continued veracity and gumption and all of the things to do. And I know that it's gone through several different machinations, but what we have before us, I think, is a really great bill to go forward. And loved your work with the Voting Rights Act of Virginia to make sure that language access really is a huge part of it, because when you make it easy to vote, people do vote. And with that, Madam Chair, I would move that we report House Bill 989 as amended.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 989 as amended. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the roll. Looks like House Bill 989 reports on a bill of 7-0. Thank you, Delegate Tran.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
So we have Delegate Scott with House Bill 1189. And then Delegate Reeser, you'll be up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 980, I'm sorry, I was looking up at the screen and I was getting ready to say that wrong.
Not your bill.
This bill that's before the committee is to require each locality to do a random hand count of at least one precinct per election cycle. After some conversations with some stakeholders and also the development of a legal issue that's actually happening in my locality regarding hand counts, I know that it's the history of this body to typically not take up legislation that could impact the outcome of a lawsuit. And so with that, I actually request that this be carried over to 2025.
The committee.
Madam Chair,
moves by motion.
I move this to 2025.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second.
Substitute motion.
Delegate Price.
While I appreciate that would be a nice way to handle this bill, I really do think a statement needs to be made about how slow and error-prone hand counts have been. And so my motion would really be to lay this bill on the table. And then if there's anything that you can do on your own in the interim to bring this back in a way that could pass next year, I do invite you to do that. But we do not intend on bringing this back up in the interim. So again, my motion would be to lay this bill on the table.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second to lay House Bill 1189 on the table. The clerk will open the rolls. I need a vote. The clerk will close the roll. And it looks like House Bill 1189 has been laid on the table at a vote of 4-3. Thank you. Appreciate your enthusiasm as well.
Thank you to both Madam Chairs. Y'all have a great night.
All right. Next up, we have House Bill 1490. Delegate Reeser.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I have a line amendment to offer. May I speak to the amendment?
Go right ahead. Thank you.
The amendment adds a specific code section that has already established a minimum requirement for absentee voting and clarifies that nothing in this new proposed section allows localities to offer less than what is already required of the Board of Elections.
Move the was it an amendment? Move line amendment.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second to move the line amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay, the amendments are before us. If you could, Delegate Reeser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the objective of HB 1490 is to allow some local choice in establishing, by ordinance, additional days and hours beyond what local boards of election already must offer for absentee voting. It continues to prohibit any reduction in dates or hours of operation for those offices to be enacted within 60 days before a general election, as is already the law. And the reasons for my bringing this bill forward are twofold. Number one, voting is the cornerstone of democracy. All of us get to be here every day and talk about laws and different ways to engage with our democracy, but the way our constituents participate in their own democracy is to show up and cast their vote. So this bill would allow those who face challenges with work commitments, transportation, or health issues, if their locality decides this is right for that community, to have additional days and times where they can vote absentee. Increased participation since the pandemic has been record-breaking in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Previous to the pandemic, 10% of ballots were roughly 10% of ballots were absentee, and we've seen 1/3 of voters cast absentee ballots in 21 and 22, and in 2023, over 550,000 of the 800,000 ballots that were cast were absentee voting. So in closing, I would just like to say that we've seen the benefits of voter turnout with utilization of early voting locations, and this bill simply wishes to allow for localities to have the option to tailor to their community's needs. I hope that the subcommittee will report the bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Price.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is for council or the patron. Can you remind us again, I'm sorry, we were trying to pull up the amendment.
Yes.
What does the line amendment do?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. So at the end of the changes, you'll see that the proposed bill says that.
And we can, I'm sorry, I'll direct it to Madam Attorney. Just for
okay. Okay, but may I just simply say
after she responds? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, on line 15, after by, we'll strike the word law and insert subsection B of 24.2-701.1. This is the code section that requires it be available during business hours, 8 to 5, and that it has to be provided on the first and second Saturday immediately preceding the date of the election.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Reeser.
Yes, so I was looking for the line at the end of line 15, as council said, the proposed language is that any ordinance adopted shall not provide for what is less than already required by law, and I thought it was important to make a specific reference to which law and not just law generally, so as to avoid creating a conflict of law or the appearance thereof.
Delegate Green.
Would this allow Sunday voting if a registrar deemed it necessary?
Madam Chair, Delegate Green, that is currently provided by law, that it is the discretion of the registrar or the electoral board to provide for Sunday voting.
Thank you.
Delegate Wassman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if we do a statewide election, if this possibly would give unfair advantages to certain candidates because certain localities had extended hours where other candidates may be running in favorable districts that don't have extended hours.
Madam Chair, may I? Madam Chair, Delegate Waxman, I believe that the authority to have extended hours already exists throughout the Commonwealth, and each locality's Board of Elections already has the authority to do that. What my bill would do is give the locality itself the same ability to decide for its community and to exercise its discretion and to carry the cost themselves if they so choose.
Is there a follow-up, Delegate Wassman? Okay, Delegate Bloxham.
All right. So I'm trying to figure out, I thought now, like my supervisors can establish satellite now. So I'm trying to figure out what are we trying to do that's different than what's already in practice?
Madam Chair, may I? Madam Chair, Delegate Bloxham, you are exactly correct. Localities may establish the location. This allows them to establish, in addition to the location, days and times, in addition to the minimum already required by Virginia Code.
Chair?
Delegate Price.
Can this bill go by temporarily?
This voice vote.
I think that's just
Okay,
courtesy.
we're gonna take your bill by temporarily.
Thank you.
Do some working out. Okay. Thank you. Now, unfortunately, the only bills that we have left while they sort out House Bill 1490 is we'll have Delegate Sickles' bill, which I believe Delegate Price will be presenting as he is in another committee, and then we have Delegate Price's bill, the House Bill 623, and they'll be the last two things on our docket before we roll out. The committee will be at ease. committee will come to order. And Delegate Reeser.
That's all I have today, Madam Chair.
Gratitude. So is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
I'll just speak briefly because Tram win with New Virginia majority. I think the bill just simply adds for the local jurisdiction, the local authority, city council or county board, the authority to also determine the hours in addition to the location of the polling place. I know there's a little bit of confusion in terms of the line amendment and referencing back to that subject section, but I think at the heart of it is it's a very simple bill to make sure that the local jurisdictions are able to determine the scope of early voting. So we support that. Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill?
Clever Wheeler, Albemarle County Electoral Board, speaking for myself. Currently, the registrars determine, with the help of the electoral boards, where the satellite offices are, because the satellite offices are, by definition, satellites of the registrar's office. The locality governing body determines where the regular precincts are for Election Day. This bill would give that authority for the satellite offices and the time of operation, which must be staffed by the registrar's staff. So I'm not sure why the governing body, the boards of supervisors and the city councils, would know more about this than the registrars and the electoral boards, who have to staff them and figure out where the voters are. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe online we have Nicholas Gothard.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Nick Gothard on behalf of the Virginia Civic Engagement Table. In order to give every Virginian an opportunity to access the freedom to vote, we support this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And you had a few comments online. Lavari of Loudoun County, Logabo of Loudoun County, Lindsay of Loudoun County, Gada of Leesburg, Galino of Loudoun. Are there any other questions from the subcommittee?
Move to report as amended.
It has been moved and properly second to report as amended. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the roll, and it looks like House Bill 1490 reports on a vote of 4-3. Thank you, Delegate Reeser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, subcommittee members.
As I said before, we have 2 bills left. Delegate Price, would you like to take your bill or Delegate Sickles' bills up?
Let's go with Delegate Sickles' bill.
Okay.
And first, I would move that we incorporate House Bill 185 into House Bill 1534.
So move.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay. And the bills have been incorporated. Delegate Price.
Thank you. So this bill does, House Bill 1534 does a couple of things. First, it eliminates in-person voter challenges at polling places. Currently, anyone can challenge a voter's eligibility when they show up to vote at the polls, and they don't have to provide any evidence for why they are challenging the voter. Not only can that be disruptive to trying to run an efficient polling location, especially as our voting engagement increases, but also nothing prevents an individual from stationing themselves at a polling place and challenging every voter who shows up. So second, 3 voters can still challenge any voter's registration, but they must do it in the circuit court for that locality. And then third, anyone who wishes to challenge a candidate's eligibility would have a kind of deadline in order to do that before going into the main election. There was an example of that happened where a candidate was actually challenged during voting and was invalidated as a candidate. and then through the course of the courts was revalidated as a candidate. And that was immensely confusing for the voters on whether or not to vote for the person, to write the name in. And so this would just say that challenge would have to happen by a certain time before they went through with the printing of the ballots and all of that. And then if anyone wished to do that, they would be filing that in circuit court for the city of Richmond. And that is, and I also have a substitute on behalf of the patron of the bill.
Okay. What is can you speak to the substitute before?
Everything that I just said was to the substitute.
All right, so it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor to adopt the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Madam Chair, I do apologize. So now that the substitute is properly before us, really what I just described, those main 3 points are what the substitute does.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Price. Are there any questions from the committee? Delegate Bloxham.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Why are we picking Richmond? I'm assuming the way this is written that if someone in my district wanted to petition right now, they go to the court, the local circuit court, but now you're making us come to Richmond. Is there a particular reason?
Yes, and I can answer this because you'll see it in my bill as well. It's honestly trying to prevent court shopping and trying to create, without actually creating, a place where the Richmond Circuit Court being the place where these voter challenges or voting rights challenges come. It's the capital, it's where the Supreme Court is, it's where appeals would go through, but also to prevent the court shopping by having it at one designated location.
Follow up?
Delegate Bloxham.
So that's more in line with a statewide election, court shopping, whereas if in the case of my election, it would have to go to circuit court in my district. Is that correct? I mean,
For the purposes stated in this bill for challenging a candidate's eligibility, that is the city of Richmond, for the circuit court of city of Richmond.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Madam Chair and committee members, Mary Crutchfield with League of Women Voters of Virginia. We support HB 1534. The bill would dispense with a relic of Virginia's past. We have a modern voter registration system with professionals making the determination of who is eligible to vote. Challenges are still possible before a court as appropriate. The bill would also prevent challenges to a candidate in the middle of an election when all the facts have been available since well before voters began casting their ballots. Such challenges may be misleading and are disruptive of the electoral process, not to mention unfair to candidates.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Tram Nguyen with New Virginia Majority. Thank the Delegate Sickles isn't here, but thank Delegate Sickles for working on the substitute language. It does clarify that for voter challenges and voter registration challenges, those actually happen in the local circuit court. And I think in the original introduced bill, all of that was also going to the city of Richmond, which would make it like if I wanted to defend my registration and I lived in Fairfax County, to drive 2 hours down to Richmond to defend my eligibility was a little bit cumbersome. So we do appreciate that those changes were made so that they can go back to the locality. As Chair Price said, it's only the candidate challenge that goes to the Circuit Court of Richmond, so it makes it a little bit cleaner. And the other clarification on voter registration challenges is currently the challenges can go to the general registrar. And we saw last year in a couple of jurisdictions some voter registration challenges were occurring during the early voting period. And so and the registrars have like 10 days to adjudicate these cases while they're also trying to administer an election. So it just means that if you want to challenge somebody's voter registration, you can still do that, but it would just have to go to the court, the local circuit, the circuit court, instead of going to the general registrar's office, because they have a ton of other things to do. So we support the bill. Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Clever Wheeler, Albemarle County Electoral Board. As we all know, in Virginia, the current law says that you need no ID. You merely walk into a polling place on Election Day and say, I'm Susie Q and I live at 13 Maple Street. And you sign a piece of paper that says, I'm Susie Q and I live at Maple Street. You don't even actually have to put the Maple Street there. And you get a ballot and you get to vote, provided that your name is registered in the poll book. Well, suppose there's someone else in the polling place who actually knows Susie Q because it's their next door neighbor. They can challenge that person, but they better be 100+% sure, because they have to fill out a form in the polling place to challenge right then on the spot. The voter gets a ballot, puts it in the machine. But if the challenge is accurate when it's discovered, then that person has just committed the voter has committed an illegal act.
Madam Chair.
But if the person leaves, you never know who that person was, that voter. So a challenge has to be verified on the spot. You have to be 100%. And the voter still gets to vote. But there are many reasons why someone could be voting and not be eligible to vote, and nobody knows it unless they're standing right there in the polling place. Maybe it's somebody who died. I know that John is dead because I went to his funeral and there was an open casket. I know that person's not 18 years old because I'm the one who drove his mother to the hospital 17 years ago.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just to confirm.
Hold on one moment.
Order.
Go ahead, Delegate Henson.
We're talking about the candidate's qualification, not. Okay.
Delegate Price.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I think the point that the last testimony was dealing with was the voters being able to challenge another voter's registration. And as I said, like, there were lots of examples that were given, but right now you do not have to have any of that proof in order to challenge it while you're at the polling location. And just like you have to sign for the challenge in order for there to be information, I just want for us to stop downplaying the fact that when you vote based off a statement of the affidavit statement of who you are, it is with facing a felony for lying on said thing. So it's not just a piece of paper. And these three voters can still challenge another voter's registration. They just have to do it in the circuit court for that locality. So we're not taking away that ability. We are just moving where that actually happens.
Thank you, Delegate Price. I believe we have, is there any, oh, that's opposition. Is there a Mr. Nicholas Gothard? Speaking for favor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nick Gothard on behalf of the Virginia Civic Engagement Table. We strongly support this bill, which we believe would protect our democratic system from bad faith actors and safeguard Virginia's voters from potential confusion or disruptions. Thank you.
Ms. Ann Gregorian.
Yes, I'm opposed. Has been stated continually throughout this committee meeting today, registrars have the best knowledge and are accessible to the affected voters, the people that are affected. I'm talking to registrations, not so much for candidates, but for voter registration purposes. So this bill appears, I haven't seen the amendments or the combined efforts of this with Delegate Price's bill, but it does require, from my reading, 15 days notification to the challenged voters and a 60-day restriction on a challenge. This would remove the timely nature of a registration challenge that might occur on or near Election Day. And I'd like to say additionally that under 24.2652, a voter who does not appear on the poll books, which would be a voter that might be challenged, a registration that might be challenged, is required to sign a statement that affirms his registration is not under a challenge. So that's the current law. This law would remove this requirement, meaning that the registrar, who is no longer involved in the process because it's being moved to the courts, will have no indication that the voter might not be a well-qualified voter, and the voter is not required to sign a statement any longer since we're talking about affirmation statements and the importance of affirmation statements, they're no longer required to sign a statement saying that they are under challenge. So once a ballot casts a voter, as a prior witness or testimony has given, there is no way to get that vote back. And I think every vote does count. And I think that every vote that's not a well-qualified voter that cast a vote, that should not count. So I oppose this bill. I don't think it's in the best interest. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gregorian. Any other questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, the committee operates by motion.
Move to report as amended and substituted.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second to remove there you go, get the words out today, to report House Bill 1534 as substituted. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the roll, and it looks like House Bill 1534 reports with a substitute on a vote of 4-3. Lastly, we have House Bill 623. Delegate Price.
Yes, Madam Chair and members, as you'll remember, when we passed the Voting Rights Act of Virginia, we did allow for the Attorney General or any affected voter that was potentially their vote was suppressed or their vote was diluted to bring court action in order to get the remedies for that suppression or dilution. And feedback that we have received is that the court system is a lot. And it's a lot for any individual to try to navigate. And so in addition to keeping that voter or the Attorney General, this would add an organization whose membership includes voters or members who are of a protected class, including that voter, and basically allowing for someone that might, the organization that might have more resources and time to be able to devote to this, to bring that court action on their behalf. And it also adds an additional covered practice to be any change that reduces the number of voter satellite offices in the locality or the number of days or hours of operation of that satellite office to have to be subjected to that public comment period or to go through the alternate practice of going through the Attorney General's office to get permission for that. And then if this were to, if the cause of action or a violation of this was to go to court, it would again be in the city of Richmond for that, the circuit court. And that is the bill.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the subcommittee? Delegate Wasserman.
Is there a financial impact statement on this one? It seems like we're developing another layer to deal with this situation.
Madam Chair, I would say that I'm not sure which additional layer we're talking about, but right now this would be adding the number of people from like 2 categories to a 3rd category. And so this would not be have any financial impact on the state. This would be who could bring those challenges forward.
Thank you. And I checked currently online. We don't have any fiscal impact statement for the bill. Any other questions or comments from the subcommittee? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Madam Chair, Tram Nguyen with New Virginia Majority. I'm also struggling with getting my words out. We strongly support the strengthening of the Voting Rights Act of Virginia. Our organization has sued both the McAuliffe administration and the Northam administration under the Federal Voting Rights Act in federal court on behalf of our members in terms of voter registration. In Fairfax County, I don't know, maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago, making sure that students could actually register using their residential or dormitory address on campus, extending the voter registration deadline, et cetera, because these lawsuits can be resource intensive and time consuming. At the end of last year, the 8th Court of Appeals in the 8th District ruled that under the Federal Voting Rights Act, organizations cannot sue. Only the Attorney General's office, the Department of Justice could sue under the Voting Rights Act of in the federal level. And so this actually makes it clear, at least at the state level, in our state code, that organizations can file suit on behalf of their members or a protected class, in addition to the individual themselves. So it just makes it very clear that at least in the state of Virginia, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, that organizations can initiate a cause of action. Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill?
Good morning, pardon me, good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Katie Boyle with the Virginia Association of Counties, also speaking tonight on behalf of the Virginia Municipal League. So we very much appreciate the conversation we've had with the patrons' wonderful staff, and certainly appreciate the intention of this bill. We've raised concern about two pieces of it based on the feedback that we've received, and we just wanted to kind of raise those with the subcommittee as aspects of concern. First being making changes to voter satellite locations as a covered practice. I think we would expect a fair amount of changes in satellite locations from election to election, since you may need more for a really high turnout election and less for a lower turnout election. So we do have some concerns about making that part of the pre-clearance process because that requires some pretty substantial lead time, potentially exposes the locality to having to defend against a challenge. One thought we had was that legislation that full P&E reported on Friday that Delegate Srinivasan is carrying that would have the state Department of Elections put some guidelines or standards in place for satellites may give some comfort to folks who are concerned about that and may provide sort of a little bit of oversight to localities about the location of satellites. The other concern we had is about having venue in the city of Richmond, and I think there's some concern about the distance that some localities may have to travel to defend cases, particularly if they're during the lead up to an election. So appreciate the opportunity to raise some concerns and certainly happy to keep working on this as we move through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Price.
Yes, and I just wanted to say, basically, this is for covered practices for the protected classes. And so this would not be under every single situation, but maybe we shouldn't be doing things that would dilute or suppress the vote of the protected classes. And so if it does have a chilling effect on making those changes that would dilute the vote or suppress protected classes, then that's probably a good thing.
I believe online we have Dr. Stephen Goddard or Mr. Nicholas Goddard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nick Gothard on behalf of the Virginia Civic Engagement Table as an organization that works on behalf of and represents Virginians that would be directly affected by this bill. We thank the patron for introducing it, and we strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gothard. Are there any further questions or comments from the subcommittee? Hearing none.
Move to report.
Hold on, Delegate Green.
Would the patron consider a friendly amendment to having Newport News and the city of Roanoke being places to bring a suit?
Madam Chair, I would answer the delegate that I like my bill the way it is, but thank you.
And my follow-up would be, what's the matter with Newport News?
We are all sharing here. The committee operates by motion.
Move to report.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second to report House Bill 623. The clerk will open the roll. The clerk will close the roll, and then House Bill 623 reports on a vote of 4-3. Thank you very much. Again, I want to express gratitude to everyone who hung out here, who just must love election law. We appreciate you. To the subcommittee as well, great work for crossover, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
It has been moved and properly second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let's get out of here.